Hi everyone, Nick here from Whole Latte Love, and in this video we'll be going over the possibilities of having two grinders on your super automatic espresso machine. Of course, we are going to be taking a look at the GIGA 10, Jura's new super premium espresso machine that has in fact inherited the dual grinders from its predecessor, the GIGA 6. Now, if you're new to super automatics, you may not know that most of them generally will have a single grinder that you can adjust for all of the drinks on the machine. But a machine like the GIGA 10 has two grinders, which means you have lots of possibilities in terms of how to set those for the different drinks that you're going to prepare. On the side of the machine, I've got just a few of those potential options. This time around, the GIGA 10 is a machine that features Jura's cold extraction process. So their recommendation is to dedicate one of these grinders for your cold brew. You're going to need an extra coarse grind, of course, and that's going to be very helpful for when you make those cold drinks. But some of the other options that have been popular with previous machines from Jura is, for example, to dedicate one grinder to decaf coffee. Now, this machine does let you choose increments between the two grinders in percentages of 25, so you could do a true half calf if you want to say do half the coffee from the decaf grinder and then another half from your regular. But another option, which is maybe a little bit less popular, would be to actually dedicate one of these grinders just for a more coarse grind altogether. So let's say you prefer traditional American style coffees where you've got a little bit lighter body and a bit higher volume in the cup. Well, you can make one of these grinders more coarse, and then you can prepare American style coffees or even the GIGA 10's jug of coffee, all using a more coarse grind for that lighter body and higher volume. Before we continue, I do invite you to subscribe to the channel. We'll be making more content on the GIGA 10, and we've got a lot of cool reviews coming up, some more scientific stuff, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But otherwise, let's get a closer look at how we would actually start to program the grinders. Now that we know some of the possibilities of having two grinders, let's take a look at how we would actually adjust our grind setting using the programming menu on the GIGA 10. First, we'll tap the clock icon above our center drink. Using the gear in the bottom left, we can access the machine's programming menu. By tapping Set Consistency of Grind, we have the ability to adjust the grind fineness between the two grinders. Options here are left and right, and you can see we have a selection between very coarse, coarse, medium, fine, and very fine. If you've made a change to the grinder, you'll see that you'll be prompted to save in the rightmost panel. Tapping that will confirm that you've made your changes. My recommendations across these different grind settings would be to use coarse or very coarse for drinks like cold brew, as you do need a more coarse grind in order for the cold extraction process to really do its job. But if you're brewing espresso with one of these grinders, fine or very fine will be a perfect choice. Medium, of course, would be a good option if you want to brew something closer to American filter style coffee. Now, you should experiment with the drinks after you've made your changes to see if you like it, because you can always very easily go back in and make additional changes. But it's that simple to make a change to your grind for all of your drinks. Now that we've set our grinder, let's take a look at how we would name it. This can be very useful because when you're making programming changes to your drinks or adjusting on the fly, it's useful to see what you've designated each grinder for. Staying inside this same menu, we'll simply navigate on our leftmost panel until we see the option for display. Tap that and you'll see grinder name show up in the center panel, and we're given the same options of left and right grinder to give them a unique name. Simply tap the grinder you want to name. We have the left here for cold grind, which is what Mark and I were using in our other video. If we wanted to make a change to the grind and then obviously to rename the grinder, we could certainly do that. Then tap save when you've made your adjustments. Again, this is useful for when you're using different grinders for different purposes. If one is always your cold brew grinder or your decaf grinder, for example, it's very helpful to see what you've set that grinder to do. If we go back to our main menu, and let's just do a quick override, for example. When you tap on a drink, you can see where the grind is being pulled from. So in this instance, for our cold brew, 100% of our grind is coming from our left grinder. When you're making adjustments to drinks, again, in 25% increments, you can select between. Our icons are changing, you can see, and that will make a blend of those beans. So keep that in mind when it comes to personalizing the grinders for your drinks. Now that we have our grinders set up, it's important to address the other elephant in the room, a bypass doser. Yes, the GIGA 10 does have the option to brew using pre-ground coffee. In the slot opposite the water reservoir, there is a dedicated scoop that you can use to load the doser. It's important to note that you should never use more than 2 level scoops of this scoop when filling coffee using pre-ground. That unlocks, obviously, the option to offer your guests decaf, say, if you don't have a dedicated decaf grinder, or if you have other coffees that you're interested in trying that you want to use. To fill up the bypass doser, simply pull open the hatch located right in front of the 2 grinders. The machine does know when you open it, and it will also know if you did not load it with enough coffee, so you'll never be able to underdose, basically, with the machine. Close this up, and I'll be reminded that I didn't add enough beans. But let's take a look at one of the other really neat features on the GIGA 10, and that's the ability to very easily swap out the coffee that you have loaded into your hoppers. Most super automatic machines can be pretty tricky when it comes to removing existing beans that are inside the grinder. But when it comes to the GIGA 10, it's a different affair altogether. Simply rotate the machine, and you'll see a back access panel that simply pops right off. And you'll see that we have locks and slides for our 2 hoppers. So in order to remove a hopper, simply push the slide closed, which is going to cut the bean flow into the grinder, and then unlock the grinder. Then you can simply lift the hopper out, and you can empty the beans into a container, and then refill the hopper with new coffee. It's important to note that Jura is smart enough, the GIGA in particular, to know whether or not there's enough coffee to brew a drink. So you will have a little bit of coffee left over inside the grinder that you will have to mix with whatever your new beans are and grind through, or alternatively, you could take something like a vacuum and suction out the remaining beans if you want to start completely fresh with an all-new coffee. All right, I've talked enough, let's make some drinks. We'll start with something very basic, being an espresso. This gives me a chance to explain a little bit about how the GIGA 10 works. Jura uses a feature called PEP, or pulse extraction process. So on any of our low volume coffee drinks, the machine will actually use a high frequency pulse when brewing. This helps just with producing a little bit of extra crema and getting a little bit of extra flavor. Now we can make a change in our menu here if we want. So say you want a little bit more liquid before the coffee actually starts to brew. And there we go, very quiet. The GIGA 10 does have a pair of ceramic burr grinders. Incredibly fast too though. So we can take a look at what's going on our screen. On the right hand side, a little kind of just progress bar you could call it. It's going to be brown when we're dispensing coffee. It's going to be white when we're dispensing milk. And then on the leftmost panel is just sort of our step-by-step process, with the last step of course being to enjoy. We've got our espresso, now let's make its cold brew counterpart. Slide this cup over and get another one. With our cold extraction, again, you do want to put some ice in the cup. So if you've got smaller cups, you're making, say, a shot of espresso, you may need slightly smaller cubes. We're going to show off that temporary override again. By tapping the icon below our espresso, we can now make a quick change to do an iced. And I will want to slide over to the left so that we're using our cold brew grinder. Now simply tap our drink, and we're going to make our cold espresso. Similar to our pulse extraction process, when you're listening to the cold extraction process, the machine will have a very different sound to it. So there's a rhythmic kind of thunking, and you can see coffee simply dripping out of the spouts rather than the traditional flow. That is the cold extraction process at work. Now we do have a layer of crema, but obviously a little bit thinner than what we had gotten on our regular espresso. It's important just to make sure too that when you're adding ice that you leave enough room for the drink that you brew, with a little bit of volume being taken up by that ice. But now that we're finished, you can see we've got a tale of 2 coffees. We've got our traditional hot espresso that we made with just one touch, and then with our override, we've got the cold extracted espresso, perfect for those hot summer days. We've made our espressos, now let's take a look at some of the milk drinks that we can make using the GIGA 10. It's really cool because with our cappuccino that I've customized in 3 different ways, you can see how a drink, when set to the same size, has various results in the cup that are totally different based on how we've structured the amount of coffee and the amount of milk or milk foam that will have the machine dispense. Starting with our rightmost panel here, I have a drink that I named Light Foam. This was based on the Cappuccino, and if we take a look, we can ignore our grind and strength settings and move right on to the volume. Again, we were adjusting the proportions. This is the stock medium size with a large amount of coffee and a very small amount of milk foam. So in our total drink, you can see we've got quite a bit of coffee in general, which is why we have a small layer of milk on the top. But then I took it a step further to make sure that the majority of the milk that's dispensed is going to be hot milk that will blend inside the drink. So you'll have a layer of foam that's going to be very thin on the top, but you're going to have a very decisive body of coffee and milk. And as you can see, we have a very light layer of foam on top and a beautifully blended body in our light foam cappuccino. Now, for contrast, let's take a look at a drink that I named the Mega Foam so that we can see just how different that's going to look. Going into our menu, you can see that the Mega Foam is pretty much entirely foam and zero coffee. Let's take a look at how that looks in the cup. And there we have the Mega Foam. Now, if you were listening closely, you could hear that during the espresso phase of that extraction, the pulse extraction process was used because of the short volume of espresso that we were brewing. Whereas on our light foam, where we have a much larger portion of coffee, we simply did a standard extraction. Here's the two drinks side by side to show off the difference in both the blending and the layer of the foam. On to our final drink, let's take a look now at what I have named the Doppio Cap. So, as you can see again, the icon on the drink on the menu is the extra shot icon. What's going to happen here is we are going to get a second shot of espresso brewed. Again, it's important to note though that the volume from that shot is going to be divided into our total drink. So we have not changed the amount of liquid that we've asked for, just to have a little bit more coffee kick in this drink. Being a more traditional cappuccino too, you could hear the switch from milk to milk foam. Jura uses a feature on the GIGA 10 called automatic milk switchover, which means that the machine can switch from dispensing heated milk to milk foam automatically while producing a drink. Gonna get our first shot, and then you can see in our little menu here on the left that we have a second grind cycle coming up for the second shot for our drink. And kind of a nice modest head of foam compared to our other drinks. We do have a little bit of foam, deterioration on the right just as the drink settles and we lose a bit to the air. And there we have a cappuccino 3 ways using the GIGA 10. Those were some cappuccinos. Now let's take a look at the most ostentatious drink we can make, the latte macchiato. So as I mentioned when I was demonstrating some of our brewing parameters before, the macchiato has a feature called interval that lets us change the amount of time we want to wait between the dispensing of our milk and our coffee. So on this one right here, which I've named the long pause, it's going to have us wait the full 30 seconds for maximum distinctiveness between those layers in our drink. We'll go ahead and make that now. And now that we've got our milk and milk foam, we have a timer here in the right panel. You can always skip ahead by pressing, I'll call it the fast forward button that we've got in the bottom right hand corner that will jump to the next step in our process. by allowing for an interval, we are giving the milk and milk foam time to separate so that when coffee is dispensed, we will have more distinctive layers. This also gives the foam on top of the drink a little bit of time to dissipate so that you don't have any chance of overflow from your cup. And look at that. When you think of a latte macchiato, before we get all the rest of the coffee cascading to the bottom, this to me is the quintessential representation, even of just that icon that we have right on the screen, where you've got such a clear definition between our layer of foam on the top, our layer of coffee, and of course, our hot milk on the bottom. Now, let's take a look and see what it looks like if we skip the delay altogether. For our next drink, I named it the no delay because we are going to be skipping that interval altogether. Let's pop that on and see how it looks. I've said it before, but I am very grateful for surface tension. Now, as you can see with the drink that I've called the no delay, the hot coffee and milk were able to start blending more or less instantaneously, so you have a much greater cascade effect and a smaller layer on the bottom of just that hot milk. So again, you can adjust that interval between 0 and 30 seconds to allow for as much separation as you would like with your drink. Now, we'll take a look at probably the most unique coffee and milk drink that this machine can make, the Cafe Latte. This drink is unique because it actually will produce your coffee and milk simultaneously, blending both in the cup together while the drink is being prepared. For our Cafe Latte, I'm not going to change any of the settings. I'm just going to tap the icon and brew the drink as it is. This is one of the instances where our icon on the screen is really not too descriptive of what this is actually going to look like. The unique feature of this drink, again, is that we'll have hot milk and coffee being blended together. So there will be less separation of distinct layers in this drink, though there will be a little bit of foam on the top. You can, just like with other milk drinks on this machine, adjust a portion of hot milk and foam for your liking. You know, if you're not living on the edge, you might be taking up too much space. So there is our Cafe Latte. So for the last drink I'm going to prepare in this section, I want to show off a cold milk drink. So you can make cold coffee, but cold milk drinks are incredibly popular as well. The machine is going to do something unique in that when you prepare a cold version of a milk drink, it will default to using the coldest possible temperature for the milk foam as well. One thing to keep in mind is that it is using pressure from steam to actually siphon milk out of our container and into our frothing assembly, so there will be a little bit of heat, but not all that much. We'll go back and use our permanent preselection button here, and we'll change our, let's say, mega foam to a cold mega foam, and again move our slider all the way to the left to select our cold brew grinder as well. And here is our cold mega foam cappuccino. And with one touch, we have our cold brew cappuccino. For the final section of this video, I want to go over how you can customize just a few more drinks that you can access at just a few clicks. We're going to use the GIGA 10's Profiles feature. If you watched my previous video with Mark, where we did a brief overview of the machine, you know that we set up a profile for him that you can access using the Jura Cockpit. A profile is basically a small little section of the machine where you can set up 3 unique drinks that you can access that are not accessible anywhere else on the machine. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you can override them as well if you want to make quick changes even to your own profile favorites. We'll go back though. If we want to actually add a profile, we're going to use the display menu. So going back into the cockpit and selecting the green gear, we can go into the programming menu, and then on our second screen here, we want to go to Display, and we'll go to Set Profile. So I want to go over what this actually means though. When it says Set Profile, we're actually telling the GIGA 10 how many profiles do we want there to be. We're not creating a new one, we're just setting them up. So you can get all the way from 1 up to 4. Let's say we want 4, for example, so I can show you what that looks like. Now when I click Save and we go back to the Jura Cockpit, you'll see that we have profiles on both the left and right sides of the machine that we can customize. Let's say that I want to make myself Profile 4. I like green. We'll tap and hold the profile, and that's going to be how you can program your name. So we'll call this one Nick, and then we'll add a drink to it. So we've saved that, and by tapping on the profile now, that's how we can add drinks. As you can see, we have empty glasses with plus signs that lets us go in. And just like if you were to replace a product on the main menu screen, you're first prompted with the default drinks. Okay, which version of these drinks do you want to customize? For me, I love an Americano. Let's go ahead and choose that. And just like if you were to program any of the other drinks on this machine, it's a simple affair of pushing and holding to get you into the permanent settings change menu, where you can program the drink the way that you like it, or you can replace it if your profile needs a little bit of sprucing up. But it's as simple as that. Hi everyone, this is Nick from Whole Latte Love, and I'm going to be showing you some of the cleaning and maintenance features of the Jura GIGA 10. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I've been brewing a lot of drinks on this machine, and now maybe it's time for us to take care of some cleaning so that we can make sure things are in tip-top shape. So the GIGA 10 has a lot of thoughtful features that go into actually maintaining the health of your machine. There are ways to easily check what needs your attention, and then when it comes to actually performing some of those processes, they're very straightforward as well. So let's start just with the feature known as the Jura Cockpit. The Jura Cockpit was a feature originally introduced on the GIGA 6. It's accessed on the GIGA 10 by clicking on the clock located above the center drink in the machine's main menu. By tapping on that, you enter the cockpit and you can immediately see if there are different maintenance features that need your attention. So for example, I've been making some milk drinks and you can see under my status indicator that I need to clean the milk system. If I tap this, that will actually begin the process. If you want to see all of the available cleaning functions, we'll simply tap on the blue bar here with our water droplets, and that's going to bring us into the maintenance menu. So within this menu, we actually have progress bars that do show us, hey, here are different things that need your attention. So we have just what's called clean, and clean is the basic, just running a cleaning cycle in the group. So we would use a product like Jura's 3-phase cleaning tablets to accomplish this. Now, the great thing with Jura is that included with the machine are a suite of cleaning accessories, just a little bit of everything to get you familiar with how they all work, and then you can go ahead and replace them as you need. The one thing that I have up here that's a little bit different, this bigger container of the descaling tablets, is something that wouldn't come with the machine, but we have things like, for example, one Clear Smart water filter. We have our milk cleaning caddy and cleaning tablets, which I'll demonstrate for you later in the video. A water hardness test strip, which you use to program your water hardness on the machine. Some wipes for the screen if you want to keep the machine nice and sparkling clean. And then the Jura 3-phase cleaning tablets. So if you're a returning Jura customer, you're not familiar with these, the 3 phases are basically first to clean off any built up coffee oils and fats. Second is going to be to leave a protective layer to prevent that kind of buildup. And now the new 3rd phase is actually to leave behind a protective coating that helps to prevent mineral buildup as well. Now, this does not eliminate the necessity of either descaling or using a water filter, but it's just something that Jura has done to make sure that the machine's longevity is protected every time that you perform cleaning. Before we get started going over some of our maintenance processes, I want to touch on the most important factor when it comes to the maintenance of your machine, and that's going to be water quality. Jura uses a system of water filters known as Clear that you can install with the machine. They'll give you one right out of the box, and typically they call it a 3+1 approach, where generally speaking, with average use and water hardness, 1 filter plus 3 more will get you enough to filter your machine's water for an entire year. So the interesting thing about this machine in particular is that there's no way on the menu to actually activate the water filter. It's so smart that by installing the filter on its own, the machine will detect if it's installed and it will automatically begin calculating the remaining life of the filter. So the filter comes in two parts. You'll get one in a bag that looks just like this, and then you'll get an extension that you attach to the top of it. I've pre-assembled one here just for the purposes of this video. Now we'll turn the machine, and just to demonstrate, you have the handle that lifts up from the reservoir, and then a filter cover as well. By pressing on the tab on the filter cover, you can lift it up. Located on the inside of the water reservoir, there is a socket that you can see on the base, which is where we want to install the filter. That extender is used so that we can actually reach down to the bottom of the tank. So simply line up the filter with the socket. It's useful. You can remove it if you want, just to make sure that you can see it. And then simply press down with the holder to make sure that it's covered. When we reinstall the filter, the machine will detect that it's been installed, and when it has successfully detected it, you'll see a filter icon appear in the top left of your screen. If you're using a brand new filter for the very first time, the machine may have to run an activation cycle where water is drawn into the cartridge so that you have normalized flow from the reservoir. If you're cheating like me and using a pre-prepared filter, you may be able to simply remove it and reinstall it. So that's something to keep in mind if you ever remove your water reservoir from the machine if you want to give it a really thorough cleaning. Now that my water filter is installed, we can go back to our Cockpit menu. If we look now in the top left of the screen, there is a small filter icon letting us know that the machine recognizes the presence of the water filter. That's it in terms of activation. If we go back into the menu, there is going to be a change the filter bar that will fill up over time, letting us know when it's time to change the water filter. Something to keep in mind is that Jura does say, and the machine will recognize, that if there is a water filter in the machine and you change it regularly, you will not have to descale. So this descale bar will not be filling up if there is a filter present in the machine. What's worth mentioning is that if you do not replace the water filter, eventually the machine will switch itself back into descaling mode. And in descaling mode, based on the water hardness that you've programmed, the machine will eventually let you know that it's time to descale. To descale, you'll dissolve a number of Jura descaling tablets into your water reservoir and then run a descaling cycle. This takes approximately 45 minutes. So it's probably worth it just to use the filters. Something to keep in mind is that Jura will also eventually lock the machine if you do not perform maintenance. Meaning, if you go for a long enough period of time without running a descaling cycle, the machine will prevent you from using its normal functions until you clean it. So it's worth it to really keep up with the maintenance. For the descaling cycle, if you simply tap here, we can enter the descaling cycle. So you see on our leftmost panel, there's a little description of how that works. We've got a picture of one of our tablets, and by pressing start, we'll actually start that process. But first, let's actually take a step back. We're going to go into our regular settings, because the most important factor when it comes to both the life of your filter and the descaling is going to be the hardness of your water, and that's set through the standard menu using the green gear. So if you look on our first display here, we have water hardness, and so using the included water hardness test strip that comes with the machine, you can program your machine. Now, it's worth mentioning that if you ever move or you change the water filtration in your house, or something has happened that would affect the hardness of your water, that you test again. If you need another strip, you can always get them from Jura. But it's important to make sure that the machine knows how hard your water is when you're brewing so that you can take proper care of it. Going back to our cleaning menu, we have clean the milk system, and we also have rinse as two options right here in the center. Those are specifically related just to the milk circuit. So rinse is pretty straightforward. That's just going to run water through the milk system. Clean the milk system is a process that uses Jura's included cleaning caddy. So this is probably one of my favorite features of this machine. It's the same as the Z10, and in just a moment, I'll show you how that works. But basically, all you do is you fill up this with some of our cleaning tablets, lock it in place in the center. There are little tabs that fit straight into the drip tray, and then using the included tubing, you create a closed circuit that will both activate cleaner and then siphon it into the tray. So you can simply remove that when you're all done, dump it into the sink, and your milk system has been cleaned. We can run that milk clean right here from the maintenance menu, or we can select it directly from our status that we have here in the center of the Jura cockpit. Now, if we want to, say, use our cleaning tablets by pressing clean here, you would open the bypass chute in order to do that. And so that's going to be running water through the brew group to activate the cleaner. So before I actually demo some of these procedures, you could always go into the maintenance menu and see how far along you're progressing in terms of actually needing to perform maintenance on your machine. You can also press the heart icon in the center of the cockpit, and now the machine will do a self-diagnosis and let you know if anything needs your attention. After our diagnosis was complete, the machine's letting me know that the milk system could be cleaned. No surprises there. So let's take a look at how we would perform the milk cleaning procedure. Now that I've run my diagnostic, let me show you how we can perform a milk cleaning procedure using the GIGA 10. It's actually incredibly easy, as I mentioned. This dispenser is pre-measured, so that means that inside the top chamber here, when you flip this upside down, a measured dose of cleaning tablets will be loaded and ready to be dispensed. So now all I have to do is simply take it like this, drop in my tablets, and we're ready to go. By pressing clean the milk system, we'll be prompted if we want to clean the milk system. And of course, Jura says this is roughly a 4-minute process. By pressing next, this will begin. It's making sure that we are connected, that we have our cleaner in place, and we can get started. Now, the really neat thing about this is going to be a very on-the-rails procedure. You no longer have to press any buttons or tap anything on the machine. It's going to activate the cleaner, and then it's going to siphon it into the spout assembly. So one caveat that I will introduce here is that you do want to make sure if you're ever cleaning the machine that your drip tray is empty and that your water reservoir is full, because water will be dispensed internally and water will be drawn from the reservoir. And if either of those either empty or fill up, the machine will want your attention. So that's just one little caveat to keep aware of if you are ever performing maintenance on the machine. Now, this menu is showing us just our progress throughout this process. So first, we're just getting water nice and hot, and it's going to dispense down into the caddy. And with our green check mark, we know that the milk system has now been cleaned. We're free to disconnect the caddy from the machine and simply dump that into the sink. One of the things that makes this so simple is, again, once you've loaded up the cleaning tablets into the caddy and started the process, the machine will continue the cycle without any further intervention. The other thing that I really enjoy is that we are cleaning our milk tube and our spout assembly by running the cleaning solution through both of them. Now, let's go ahead and check our status again. All okay. And if we were to run our diagnostic, I think we'd be green checks across the board. Even though we're green checks across the board as far as our machine status, I want to show you too how we can clean using our 3-phase cleaning tablet. Off screen, I did refill our water reservoir and empty the drip tray. Something I want to point out about the drip tray, just a really cool design. Jura has what they call first class handling. So you remove the drip tray, and that's also going to remove the drag drawer for you as well. You've got kind of the garage door style opening. Something that's really neat about this machine is that the drip tray itself has a cutout in there for water to pour out of, so it's just easier when you take it to the sink, and you can simply remove the drag drawer from the top of it. So to run our cleaning cycle though, we'll go back into our cleaning menu and we'll hit clean. So I do have a 3-phase cleaning tablet here. We've got 3 colors there, 1 for each phase perhaps. We'll go ahead and press start. They are prompting me to empty the grounds container and the drip tray, which I've already done in advance. So, but we do have to actually do it. So here we are. Show off what I was talking about. We do have the cutout there and some nice contacts as well. So the machine actually does monitor when we have too much water in the tray. So it's very smart like that. Close the door as well. We do want to put a container underneath the spouts. We're going to be running a lot of water through. So if you've watched my previous video on programming the machine, you'll see that my pot of coffee is making a reappearance here. Hit next. Machine's being cleaned. So we're not going to drop in our tablet just yet. We're going to follow along with our instructions so that we can perform the process as indicated. Now that the brew circuit has been primed, we are being prompted to add our cleaning tablet. That's going to have us drop it right in through the bypass doser. So, drop that in, and the machine is now being cleaned. And with that, our cleaning cycle is complete. Now, if we go back into our cockpit and we go to the maintenance menu, you can see that the clean progress bar has been reset. So pretty neat with the blue water, but you know, cleaning your machine is something that you really want to make a good habit out of doing. It's just like getting the oil changed in your car or maybe changing the furnace filters in your house. This will make sure that the machine runs properly, lasts long, and it ultimately protects the flavor of your coffees as well. So when you're running a cleaning cycle too for the brew group, it's important to note that that's a completely separate process than descaling. So even if you do descale the machine or if you're using a water filter, those coffee oils and grounds still build up inside the brew group, which is why it's important to use Jura's cleaning tablets to get everything nice and taken care of. That about covers it for cleaning on the Jura GIGA 10. So this has been the final part in my series on the new machine, and it's kind of ins and outs, ranging from the grinder to programming your favorite drinks and now finally maintaining your machine. If you haven't checked out any of those videos, absolutely take a look for them. We've got them on the channel. Again, I'm Nick with Whole Latte Love. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've got questions about your GIGA 10 or any other machine that you need help with, leave me a comment and I'll be sure to reply. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're putting out some of the best in everything coffee, brought to you by Whole Latte Love.